With their colossal bodies, Dory and Brogy sent the Marines fleeing in terror. The large axe struck directly down onto the warship below their feet, shattering everything into many pieces. The giants began to shout, calling for the remaining members to come to the island to help Luffy. With just one jump, the two giants reached the mainland, followed by familiar figures who crushed everything in their path with a large ship. Oimo and Kashi were assigned by the captain to defeat all the troublesome marine ships. Dory reminded everyone to be careful and spread out to eliminate anyone who dared to touch the Straw Hat pirates. Hearing this, everyone laughed loudly to boost their morale. Just like that, they coordinated to destroy all nearby warships. The Marines could only scream in despair, unable to do anything, announcing that the legendary giant pirate crew had arrived. The leaders were Brogy and Dory. At this moment, the Marines still didn't know why they were here at this crucial moment. Warships from afar tried to fire cannons, but failed. With the giants' bravery, they continuously destroyed warships without any difficulty. At this time, Usopp, from above, discovered that his old friends had come to help and was moved to tears. He asked why the great lords had come. Nami was delighted that Oimo and Kashi were also there, and the group began to recall what had happened years ago. For a very long time, the world had always feared the giant pirate crew, but they disbanded due to a fierce quarrel between the two captains, Dory and Brogy. Luffy and the other members unfortunately fell into that 100-year-long battle, even though they had forgotten the reason why the two sides fought. But Brogy and Dory continued. Luffy and Usopp were extremely amazed by the immense pride displayed by the two giant warriors. This motivated Usopp, who said, "This is exactly what I want to become, a brave warrior of the sea." And on another island, the Straw Hat Pirates met Oimo and Kashi, who wanted to know news about their captain. After that, everyone became friends, and now, when everyone was in danger, these friends came to help. Perhaps the giant pirate crew had heard some news, which is why they rushed here. This incident is an attack related to the government. The next day, it will surely be published in the newspaper. Although the news will be written in a way that benefits the government, it will still be enough to create a major shocking event. Usopp was also sure that the great lords would not come to fight, but to save them. So they also had to speed up the plan. Nami contacted Brook to ask how he was, and only heard the other girls scream. Brook reassured her not to worry. He would be there soon, with the Sunny. Although he still didn't know how to stop, he was very confident in his luck, advising Lilith that rushing wouldn't help. She was afraid that if they continued like this, they would crash into the barrier and explode. She contacted Nami again for help because she would pass by them. Elsewhere, Zoro and Lucci were still fighting without a clear winner. The situation was becoming more chaotic than ever, so Jinbei reminded the crew's swordsmen to end the fight quickly. After fighting for a while, Zoro was also out of breath from exhaustion, saying Lucci was truly stubborn. While he himself was in a hurry, the opponent said that only the final winner had the right to say that. The two sides continued to clash. Lucci reminded Zoro that he was making his teammates wait to distract him. Martial arts versus swordsmanship, but because the other person possessed an animal-type devil fruit, his stamina was far superior. Thus, Zoro was pushed back. The opponent knew the personalities of the Straw Hat crew members, which was that they wouldn't abandon anyone, so he simply needed to stall for time to win. Because that way, the other members would be stuck here. Hearing this, our swordsman replied that he was not the one to decide how long this battle would last. So don't be overconfident. Returning to the coast now not only means facing a giant pirate crew, but the Navy is still suffering heavy losses from the biological robots. About 30 small warships have been sunk, and the number is still increasing. There's no other way. The Vice Admiral of the Navy ordered the large ships to target the pacifistas to reduce the damage. Although it's still unknown why the biological robots rebelled, the top priority is still to preserve the Navy's forces. Nearby, despite the extremely intense battle, two other powerful figures were leisurely strolling. It had been a long time since they had participated in such a large battle, so they were quite excited. The sniper friend thought this was definitely a battle that could change the fate of the world. Returning to Bonnie, who was now looking at the image of the Sun God Nika, every movement, every sound that Luffy made impressed her. She had always been looking for the warrior of liberation, and now that person had appeared, seeing her friend crying. Luffy asked if something was sad. Bonnie called Luffy an idiot. Of course she had to cry because she had always been looking for him. Luffy laughed and said that he had always been there with her all this time. She said that Before she didn't know Luffy was the Sun God Nika. In fact, Luffy didn't even know what Nika was, and asked why she wanted to find him. Bonnie replied that she always wanted to be able to throw a powerful rubber punch like him. Hearing that, Luffy remembered that this friend had also used a similar move earlier. He criticized that punch as being very weak. Hearing that, Bonnie asked Luffy to demonstrate, to throw a powerful punch toward Saturn to avenge Vegapunk. He looked at the scientist and realized there was a large hole in his chest. Shocked, Luffy's eyes popped out. Their enemy had not yet acted, but declared that the insects would not be able to do anything to him. Luffy didn't think so, and when Bonnie asked him to take her and everyone off this island, Luffy agreed. By the way, he wanted to show Bonnie what a powerful punch was like. Conqueror's haki began to emanate, making Saturn worried. He continued to use his gaze to make Luffy unconscious, but this time he endured it. He laughed and charged, then used 2 giant fists to continuously punch Saturn in the face. He couldn't resist, and could only endure the damage Luffy inflicted. Bonnie witnessed this scene with great satisfaction. The words Kuma once said about Nika appeared in her mind. The actions of the warrior of liberation moved her soul. Nika was considered a legend, but that father had told his daughter that the warrior of liberation would make everyone laugh to the rhythm of liberation. And if the hero could change this world powerfully, Kuma believed it was Luffy. High above, our captain was still throwing a series of powerful punches at his opponent. As a result, Saturn couldn't bear it, and was sent flying through the buildings. Luffy laughed gleefully after those punches. Thanks to him, their group had time to escape. Atlas urged everyone to hurry up and go. Frankie also called Bonnie, but she was worried about Dr. Vegapunk. He said he was also a medical expert, so he knew his current condition well. So, don't worry, and run first. Suddenly Kizaru's voice rang out, saying that whether he moved or not, he would die anyway. Before everyone could react, this admiral shot a beam of light directly at them. Fortunately, Sanji stepped forward to block it, surprising the opponent. Frankie's jaw dropped, and he exclaimed that it was a laser beam, and yet he could still kick it away. His friend said that it didn't matter to him. His love would definitely be stronger than light. Hearing this, Kizaru found it funny, and wondered if there was something wrong with Sanji's head. Frankie was assigned the task of protecting Bonnie and not letting her get hurt. Vegapunk continued to urge his granddaughter to leave the island with Kuma. They could now hover close to the ground, allowing them to move quite quickly. Luffy then praised his crewmate, saying Sanji was amazing. The Marine Admiral said he would lose face if he couldn't bring back their heads. Sanji lit a cigarette and chuckled, saying that in that case he just needed to write an apology letter to Marine headquarters. Meanwhile, St. Saturn unexpectedly encountered 2 members of the Blackbeard pirates. Devon had eaten the mythical 9-tailed fox devil fruit. Seizing the opportunity, she approached and touched Saturn's body with one hand, saying the mission was complete. Van Augur, on the other hand, had eaten the warp fruit. When asked about being one of the dangerous prisoners on level 6, yet serving someone else, Devon said Captain Teach was special. The old man also knew that Blackbeard's bloodline was very special, coupled with the strange actions of this pirate crew. Saturn wanted to know what they truly wanted. Van Augur said it was the world, but he was attacked by the old man. However, using his warping ability, he safely transported his comrade to another location. Since the mission was complete, both intended to return immediately. Van Augur himself had not yet mastered his warping ability and still needed more practice. Suddenly, a familiar face appeared, crying with joy at having found the 2. Caribou couldn't believe he met them here and asked to join the crew, saying he set sail with the same hope as that person, and his dream was to become one of Blackbeard's subordinates. So he begged the 2 to take him with them. Caribou cried, saying he had a secret that Mr. Teach would surely want to know. He believed that if he were introduced to the captain, both their statuses would be elevated. However, Van Augur didn't believe him, and directly threatened him with a gun. Caribou, terrified, begged, saying he wasn't an enemy, so they shouldn't shoot him. He cried out that fate had brought them together in this place, asking if they thought so too. As for him, he was very sure, so he begged them to listen. Devon felt that the man in front of them was truly incomprehensible, while Van Augur knew clearly that the opponent was Caribou. Although they were both pirates, this island belonged to the world government, and the appearance of a stranger was not worth trusting. Caribou begged them not to kill him because he was not a subordinate of the Marines at all. and if they killed him here, Captain Teach would crush their heads. This threat made the other two feel confused, asking for a clear explanation of why. The suspect then revealed that he had important information that others didn't know. Devon felt it was absurd just hearing it. What important information could a mere incompetent pirate have? Caribou continued to assert that if they killed him, they would regret it for the rest of their lives, because he possessed information powerful enough to shake the entire world. He hoped they would understand and take him to meet Captain Teach, as it would be mutually beneficial. He secretly thought about what he had accidentally learned. These were ancient weapons named after gods that had existed since ancient times, one of which was Poseidon, held by the mermaid princess Shirahoshi, and another was Pluton, deep underground in Wano. These terrifying ancient weapons were said to be powers capable of destroying the entire world. The Straw Hat Pirates, and he were the only ones in the world who knew the exact locations of both of these destructive weapons. Looking at Caribou's confident expression, the sniper asked him to reveal the secret now, but he refused. "Only when I meet Captain Teach will I provide all the information I have. He will surely be delighted." Back on the beach, the Marines still didn't know how to deal with the biological robots. Although some pacifistas had been taken down, there were still many left. The Marine warships were shot down one after another, and each time they fired back, the bubble shields of the biological robots activated, blocking all damage. Having no other choice, the vice admirals had to order a retreat before the casualties increased. However, the attack range of the pacifistas was very far, and even though they kept their distance, some ships were still shot and exploded. The desperate cries of the Marine soldiers worried Vice Admiral Doberman. He knew that if they couldn't control the pacifistas, they couldn't destroy this island. Fighting them also made others feel bored, and, furthermore, the giant tribe had landed on the other side of the island. These were all unexpected events. Since Dr. Vegapunk was the one who gave the pirates control of the pacifistas, the Marines had even more reason to destroy this place. The crime of betraying the world government was a very serious crime that needed to be dealt with strictly. First, they wanted to regain control of the biological robots, and that could be done by eliminating Bonnie. Many vice admirals were ordered to go ashore and search for her. At this very moment, Frankie and Bonnie were being pursued by Vice Admiral Tosa. Although they were flying at high speed, the old man could still catch up. Atlas asked Frankie to use all his strength to shake him off, but due to the excessive speed, it was very difficult to control. He tried to weave through the trees, while Tosa used his muscular strength to cut them all down. Witnessing this scene, the two were extremely worried. Bonnie warned that he was about to do something. The Vice Admiral tensed his arms to unleash a special move towards Bonnie. However, before he could get close, the giant tribe arrived and intercepted him. With just one blow, the Vice Admiral was flattened. The Frankie group looked up and were terrified by the giants. As a latecomer, he had no idea who Dory and Brogy were. The young girl screamed in fear, as it was her first time seeing someone so huge. Frankie thought they were enemies, but that wasn't the case. Their friend asked who they were, and although they had studied the new Straw Hat members through their bounties, they didn't recognize anyone. Dory said, "We're here to find Luffy and the others." Frankie happily replied, "He's our captain." When asked if they wanted to fight Luffy, they said no. The giant pirate crew was there to help their old friends. This was the promise they had made with the Straw Hats long ago. With such strong allies, Frankie felt completely at ease. Bonnie said that Vegapunk, Sanji, and Luffy were in the center of the island. Hearing those names made Brogy feel nostalgic. Of course, they would save Vegapunk, as he was the person the scholar had mentioned. So, the giants took Kuma onto the ship for treatment. The others would head to the center of the island to help Luffy. Outside, the vice admirals were losing patience as Tosa's communication was cut off. The remaining ones were forced to seek out the giant's ship for an opportunity. Many years ago, Dahl had a giant as a boss, and he was very strong, so the members of the giant pirate crew could not be underestimated. The Frankie group was being taken to safety. He said that the remaining crew members were in the laboratory in the clouds. Back to St. Saturn, who was now panting, his entire body suddenly transformed, becoming stronger and larger. Luffy went to Vegapunk and asked if he was okay. The doctor's heart was being measured by advanced equipment in the laboratory, and it was weakening by the second. Conversely, their enemy was becoming more terrifying. Wherever Saturn went, poison spread, to the point where the ground melted. Luffy realized that if he took Dr. Vegapunk away now, he would bleed to death. Admiral Kizaru felt things had gone too far, and being constantly obstructed by Sanji annoyed him. Conversely, Sanji asked the opponent not to block their way anymore. At this moment, Saturn's ugly form attracted them. He was extremely angry that he still couldn't eliminate Luffy, who was still sitting there talking with Vegapunk. He said that they had promised to take him away from here. However, he knew he wouldn't live much longer, so he asked Luffy to leave. He also wanted to tell Bonnie about her power when she got a little older, saying that her life would definitely be in danger. So, he hoped Luffy could protect Bonnie. Sanji stood before the enemy and felt that he was completely different from a human, from his insane eyes to his monstrous appearance. Saturn looked towards Luffy to find an opportunity to attack. Sanji also warned him and immediately carried Vegapunk to another place. He knew the doctor would be in a lot of pain, but had to endure a little longer. The main character, seeing his comrades in danger, actively attracted attention. By clapping his hands loudly to create sound, he laughed and said, "I'm here to provoke the monster." Saturn, provoked, turned to target Luffy. However, he easily dodged the attack and simultaneously asked Sanji to take Dr. Vegapunk first and not to worry if he was in pain while moving. Following that advice from the captain, Sanji turned and ran, but Saturn chased him. The main character appeared in front of him again to provoke him. He said, "You will never be able to catch us." He even slapped his butt like a child. Extremely angry, Saturn attacked wildly, but not a single blow hit Luffy. He dodged very well, treating this battle as a simple game. As for Dr. Vegapunk, he now asked to be put down. Sanji continued to run, but Kizaru appeared and blocked his way. He was kicked away, unable to do anything. Vegapunk was pierced through the body by his old friend using devil fruit powers. After the act, the Marine Admiral felt very sad, but could not disobey orders from his superiors. Sanji was also shocked to see Dr. Vegapunk like this. Luffy continued to ask his friend to take him to the back of the island with the other members. This time, Kizaru did not stop them, but just stood there, holding his sadness within. Luffy angrily transformed his body to become huge, and even Admiral Kizaru and Saint Saturn were held tightly by him, unable to move. Luffy said he would not let them chase his friends. Vegapunk, at this point, could no longer breathe. Looking at Luffy one last time, he smiled contentedly, and then his heart stopped beating. Sanji, heartbroken, tried to shake Vegapunk awake, but it was in vain. Perhaps the doctor had foreseen this scenario, so as soon as his heart stopped beating, a pre-prepared recording immediately played for the whole world to see. Dr. Vegapunk introduced himself as a genius scientist, and the message he left behind would surely shock everyone. But it was the truth of the world, so he would still speak it. Dr. Vegapunk's plan was set in motion the moment his heart stopped beating. In the recording, Shaka told him to speak slowly, so that people all over the world would have time to prepare. After this news was broadcast, it would surely spread everywhere, but they still had to be prepared for the worst-case scenario. All over the world, people had now begun to hear the voice of the genius scientist. Vegapunk's plan was to use marine branches around the world as relay stations. The words they spoke would be forcibly broadcast at maximum power, which is why even if the Marines tried to turn off the equipment, the voice still echoed. On the island, Sanji also heard those words through his headphones. He asked Vegapunk what was going on but received no answer. The two opponents being held by Luffy were extremely angry, while he smiled confidently, having subdued Kizaru and Saturn. Hearing Vegapunk's voice, Luffy thought he was still alive and was very happy. Conversely, Saturn was extremely worried about what the scientist would say to the world. High above, the remaining members of the Straw Hat Pirates were confused about what had happened. Nami and Usopp thought Dr. Vegapunk was acting recklessly. If so, it would ruin their rescue plan. No one had realized that their friend had died, so the recording was automatically played. Back with the giant pirates, Brogy and Dory were trying to run as fast as they could to Luffy. They knew something was about to happen and felt very excited. Below, the Marines were still ambushing, trying to stop them. However, with Brogy and Dory's massive size, the Marines were like mere insects. Everyone trembled before these two. Looking at the fools below, the two giant warriors praised their courage. Unfortunately, that wouldn't change anything. A barrage of cannon fire was then shot by the Marines. The explosion was huge, but Dory and Brogy were completely unharmed. At this point, the soldiers below realized that this was not an opponent they could defeat. Just like that, the axe and sword of the two giant warriors struck down. After just one blow, all the Marines below were defeated. The two captains then continued to search for Luffy. Currently, Dr. Vegapunk's broadcast has not encountered any problems. He decided to take 10 minutes to let people all over the world prepare, so they could clearly hear what he was about to say. Luffy looked excited after hearing this. He thought that now he just needed to deal with the two opponents in front of him, and the whole crew could leave safely. The scene shifts to Mary Jiwaz. At this moment, the broadcast that Vegapunk had prepared was making the 5 elders of the government worried. They communicated with Saturn, asking what was happening. He replied that Kizaru had just killed Vegapunk. Guessing that the message left by the genius scientist would turn the world upside down, these 4 wanted to find the broadcast source and destroy it before things got out of control. They guessed the broadcasting device was protected inside the shield at Egghead. There were 9 minutes left before the truth about the world began to be revealed. However, all over the world, people had already started gathering to listen. Dr. Vegapunk's fame made everyone curious about what he wanted to convey. In the kingdom that Luffy had once rescued from Doflamingo's evil rule, Princess Rebecca was as beautiful as ever. She and her father were watching the broadcast when Leo and Cub arrived. Before that, they heard that Luffy had taken this scientist hostage, but Rebecca didn't believe that information. She knew that Lucy, who had saved her and this kingdom, was not a coward who would take someone hostage. Hearing this, Leo also agreed. Her father realized that Vegapunk was broadcasting voluntarily, not under orders from the government. The truth about the world that the genius doctor spoke of still has to wait for him to tell it himself. The scene shifts to Luffy's hometown, where everyone is also waiting for the latest news. They even thought Luffy had done something bad again. In the places where the Straw Hat pirates passed through, everyone was preparing to wake up to listen to the broadcast. In the sky, Princess Vivi was on reporter Morgan's hot air balloon. He explained that this broadcast was being relayed through naval branches, but it was an independent signal, so it couldn't be interfered with. Based on the time in the image, Morgan realized that this was not the current time on Egghead, but had been recorded beforehand. This would become world-shattering news, and reporters all wanted to write about it. Vivi was worried about Luffy and his crew, hoping they wouldn't be in any danger. In Usopp and Chopper's hometown, everyone was watching the screen. At the same time, on Okama Island, the Revolutionary Army, especially Ivankov, was very curious about Dr. Vegapunk's head. It looked like it had been cut off, but he was still alive. Other members like Sabo were also curious about the truth of the world in Vegapunk's words. He asked Dragon if the genius doctor would really reveal the truth of the world. He said that some geniuses can even see their own future. Vegapunk had predicted that he would die, so he left this recording. Back to Bonnie and Kuma, they were safely brought back to the ship by their giant friend. The father was still unconscious, with no signs of recovery. Atlas only showed Frankie the giant ship, something they had never seen before. As soon as the two captains returned, they would set sail immediately. Now, the task was to gather all the other members of the Straw Hat crew here. Inside, Luffy was still provoking his opponent. He said that Saturn's punches just now had no effect at all. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Admiral Kizaru attacked, but Mayne dodged. He said that, until the very last moment, all his friends would escape from here. So, he wouldn't let them go anywhere. He used his ability to stretch his arm, then slammed Saturn and Kizaru's bodies together with a powerful blow. As a result, the two were flattened by Luffy as thin as a sheet of paper. Not stopping there, he even used his fingers to perform. The bodies of the two enemies were now as soft as a pizza. Luffy then used great force to throw Kizaru and Saturn away. After the fight, he returned to his original size and laughed loudly at his victory. On the coast, the group of Marines discovered something flying towards them. In the next second, Admiral Kizaru's body collided with the ship, causing it to explode. Saint Saturn was luckier, not colliding with anything. He was angry that Luffy had thrown him again. With his ability, Saturn immediately returned to attack. Luffy was also shocked to see this. Under Saturn's new attack, he had to find a way to escape. He didn't understand why his opponent wasn't injured, despite being hit so many times. As for Admiral Kizaru, he was fine, but what pained him was that he had personally killed Vegapunk. Sadly, Kizaru could only cover his face to hide his emotions. In the sky, Luffy's chase was still ongoing. The rulers reminded Saturn that there wasn't much time left. They didn't want Vegapunk's words to affect the world government. Luffy was attacked continuously, but dodged them all. He fell to the ground, but was unharmed. His opponent also landed safely, looking at the captain with terrifying eyes. Saturn knew he couldn't deal with Luffy alone, so he used his ability to summon 4 others from the Holy Land to help. Just like that, the strongest began to act. The sky there turned black again. Lightning bolts struck down, just like when Saturn appeared. Luffy witnessed this scene, not knowing what was happening. Sanji, nearby, looked worried about the captain.